So just to recap real quick, the three areas that I would encourage you to do are, number one, encourage creativity composition in your studio. Number two would be to relate theory to composition. And number three would be to develop their ear. But what do you do with the budding composer who comes into your studio and says, Mrs. Wendy, I have a piece to play for you. And they play an entire piece of music for me. How many of you have had that happen in your studio? They just want to play an entire piece. Okay, and you might feel at a loss with what to say. So let me give you some suggestions. Oh good, this is resonating. Okay, the first thing I ask my students, and I've just recently begun to do this, but I love how helpful it is for me. I ask them this, I say, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to listen? Do you want me just to listen? Do you want me to listen and tell you what I like and what I think could be better? Or do you just want me to listen? And it's really amazing how honest they are. A lot of them just say, I just want you to listen. And so I listen, and I just basically tell them something that I like about it. And that's it. If that's what they want, that's establishing sort of a safety area, an area of trust. It's going to become the safe zone. The next time, maybe when they introduce a piece to you, maybe the next time they'll say, well, why don't you listen and tell me if there's anything that I could do better? Because you've made it safe for them to share something personal. If you immediately tell them what they could do different or better with it, then they don't feel as safe sharing those ideas with you. The second thing that I ask them sometimes is, are you willing to change your piece? If you discover something new, are you willing to change it? And a lot of them will just say, no, I'm not. Okay, I know. I know now. And so when I find something about their piece that I think might need work, what I'll do is I'll suggest it for another piece instead of actually trying to suggest that they change that piece. The third thing I would say is go with your gut musical instinct. You may not be a composer, but you are a musician, right? So if a piece sounds too long, it's probably too long. If a piece sounds like it's got way too many ideas in it, it's probably got way too many ideas. If it sounds like it's repeating over and over and over again, that's probably what's happening. So trust your musical gut just a little bit more. Don't feel like just because you're not a composer you can't comment. You can, and go with your musical gut. And then what I would say is just pick one idea to talk about. Maybe there were 4 things that you noticed that you really want to talk about. Just pick one idea and focus on that one thing with the student. I like to focus a lot on melody and form, because I think that's the 2 weakest areas in student compositions, hands down. Composing a melody is very abstract for a student, and form is also, so broad. They just don't think about, the contrasting section. They don't think about how important it is to vary your ideas. And so those are the 2 things that I comment on, whether it's something I say that's a good thing that they do or something that they need to improve. I like to focus on those 2 areas. If they don't want to change something, but you notice something about the form, then maybe you'll suggest it for another piece. You could say, I really liked your melody. It's really interesting, and you repeat it an awful lot, and so I can tell it's really important to you. But after the 3rd repeat, I just feel like it, I kind of get bored, and I'm just not that interested in it. I wonder what would happen if you put a different idea in the middle of your piece and then brought back that melody at the end. Don't you think that would make me more interested in it? Because you'd be reminding me that it was important by giving this sort of contrasting, sort of giving me a rest or something like that. So maybe in the next composition they'll remember that. They may not want to change their composition, but use it as a teaching time for another composition, and don't think that your ideas that you're giving them are just going in one ear and out the other. They're probably not. So then I would just say, if I had to answer my own question about what I wish that I had done differently as a student that would make me a better composer, I would have said, one of the things I would have said was, I wished I had gotten feedback from a composer sooner. I think that would have made a difference. I would have majored in composition in my undergrad probably. But sometimes a student gets a lot of encouragement by just emailing a question to a composer. And in my day, when I was a kid, that wasn't very easy to do. Yes, there was email back then, but we didn't have it. So just sometimes getting them in touch with the composer. And I really like to get questions from students, and I would probably venture to say that most composers actually like to get questions from students, especially if the student says, I played your piece and I loved it. So, that's something you can do to kind of help that get a response from the composer. But also, if you have access to a composer and you've got a serious composition student, getting feedback from a composer on specific pieces is really helpful. I think that would have helped me a lot when I was a student. What can you use if you just still feel at a complete loss, or maybe you've used all of your ideas? What can you use as far as resources? That's the handout that I gave you. There's the 3 things on that handout, but one thing I haven't mentioned yet is the Music by Me books by FJH are fabulous. If a student goes through all 5 of these, they'll get a really good idea of all kinds of different techniques for composing. And I really like them. I don't always use them because sometimes I like to use my own ideas, and sometimes we move around in the books. It's not something you have to necessarily do in a given order, but I really like these books, and so I would encourage you, especially if you feel like you need more structure, to actually use these books, and I think they are available over there from Sense and Ease. So just to help you remember the points today, encourage creativity in your studio, especially relate theory to composition, and then develop the ear of the students. And I'm going to leave you with a couple of my smiling composers. You can't see them very well, sorry. Oh, we meant to turn the lights off. I'm sorry. I completely forgot about that. But anyway, they're really excited about their compositions, so hopefully that will encourage you to include composition in your studios.